We are committed to creating a safe and supportive space for our guests and listeners, and to provide information and tools that will help our listeners understand, manage, and overcome trauma. We understand that the healing journey can bring up challenging emotions. Therefore, we want to warn our audience that certain episodes may contain discussions or stories that could be triggering for some individuals. The content of the podcast is for educational and informative purposes only, and we encourage you to practice self-care and discretion while listening, and to reach out to a trusted support system or professional if you feel overwhelmed and need help on your healing journey. Welcome back to Healing and Growing Hand in Hand podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Tickle. And excuse me, today's guest is Steve Huckman, and he is the co-founder of Fit Body Bootcamp, which is it's the largest fitness boot camp in the world. And you're going to share your story with us, as well as your weight loss success story, which I love to hear. So many of us struggle with that. But there was something you said when we were in our pre-interview that I really liked. I don't know if it's your saying or somebody else's, but I wrote it down and I thought it was really profound. It's not what we don't like in the mirror, it's who we don't like in the mirror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a great way to start this. I really focus on, I didn't used to focus on this, but all I really focus on is the who and not the what. So a lot of people, they want to look a certain way, or they want to have a certain level of success. But really, I think it's really all about the who. So you look like who you are. So meaning, like, for me, right? I look like someone who has a certain set of nutritional knowledge and the discipline to apply that knowledge and a bigger purpose to attach that to, so that I don't get in my own way and I just look like that person. And a lot of my clients, they come to me, they want to lose 20 pounds, but who gained those 20 pounds? Who keeps regretting the actions they're taking? It's not even about the weight. It's not about your success. It's about being aligned with your conscience. And the thing is, a lot of people think conscience is just something that happens when you, like, if you steal something, it'll be on your conscience or something like that. But your conscience directs you in every part of your life. It's like that little voice in you that if you listen to it, it'll always tell you if you're aligned with who you truly are. And so if you go out to dinner, let's just say, since I'm in the fitness mindset and nutrition space, if you go out to dinner and you eat the dessert and you eat the French fries and all that stuff, and then you get in your car and that guilty feeling, it's not about weight or weight gain. It's about not being aligned with your conscience, and you're just not being good at being you. The true you really has no regret. The true you is just doing the things that make you proud and eliminating what you regret, and then you're aligned with yourself. And it's such a simple concept, but a lot of people really just don't really see it.
Yeah. One thing that I've done that has really helped me is I try to kind of forward think. So if I go to a restaurant and I'm going to have that dessert, I plan for it, and most of the time, and that seems to work for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you eat that dessert and you plan for it and afterwards you feel 100% good. So when I say 100% good, right, it's not while you're eating it. You felt great on the drive home. Then the next day when you woke up, your body felt right. You didn't feel bloated and weird. You just 100% all across the board, you felt great. Then you did the right thing. And if you didn't feel 100% across the board great, then you didn't do the right thing. And it's kind of like, to me, it's
and yet profound, because one thing I always bring up on my podcast is how important self-awareness is. And that's really what you're talking about, right? Is being self-aware, because for those of us who struggled with binge eating, that would be me. You don't think about that, and you don't care. You don't even pay attention to the fact of how crappy you feel afterwards. That's how it kind of starts. You're not paying attention to that. You're just going through the motions. And it's becoming aware of how you feel when you're eating. And that was my first cue. Is like, I didn't like feeling so full all the time and feeling like crap. That was my first cue.
Yeah. And it's not even like how you feel when you're eating. It's also how you feel afterwards, right? But with that being said, so I think the problem is, so if we're talking about weight loss and being lean, right? The whole problem with that is weight loss and being lean. So focusing on losing weight is one of the worst things to ever focus on. And I'll tell you, and
No, I
I'm someone
agree.
who helps people get lean. So it's weird that I'm, so here's what I do. First of all, I remove myself out of the equation because we are the problem. So I want to be lean, but I want to eat these fries and burger. I want to be healthy, but I want to drink this alcohol. I want to get up in the morning and work out, but I want to sleep more. So when it's all about me, then I'm fighting myself, and it depends which side of me wins that day. But here's like a great example of how having a bigger purpose changes everything. So imagine if you want to work out in the morning and you look outside and it's dark, it's cold, it's windy, it's pouring freezing cold rain, like buckets of rain. And you're like, you know what? I won't, I'm just going to take the day off, right? I don't want to go out in that rain. I'll work out tomorrow. Now, same scenario, cold, dark, windy, rainy, freezing rain, but you got to go pick your kid up from school. There's not even a thought of that. In fact, you're getting out the door faster because your bigger purpose, which is your kid, you don't want your kid sitting out there in the rain. So there's no way you're going to look out and be like, I'm not going to pick up my kid today, not in this rain. And that's the whole difference, honestly. So, like the little thing I just said just now, it could be overlooked because I said it pretty fast. But 99% of people out there do not have a bigger purpose. And if they do not attach everything they do to that bigger purpose. So, for instance, I was just looking at a video on Instagram of this like super overweight lady, and she had a kid in the background. And I was thinking, like, wow, if you asked her what the most important thing in her life was, she'd probably say her kid. But yet, everything she hates about herself, not being able to get up without like getting out of breath, not being able to walk stairs, not being able to fit in the clothes she wants, not liking her body, feeling guilty, feeling bad about herself, all of those things, she's passing those traits all down to her kid, all of them. And the thing is that you can't give that which you don't have. So if you don't solve your pain for yourself, you're passing it on to the person that supposedly you love more than anything in the world. And so I think a lot of people are just, they're not connected to that. They haven't really sat back and said, first, what's my bigger purpose? What is my purpose on this earth? We would never even live in our house in a car without having a purpose of where we're going to go. We wouldn't just drive. We always have a purpose. We have directions. We know where we're going. But 99 out of 100 people, if you ask them that, they'd have no idea. So how are you supposed to get there if you don't even know where there is?
Exactly. You're making some really good points. Excuse me. Go ahead.
And yeah, and Lisa, like, so for me, like, so my purpose, right? And this is gonna sound very broad, but this is truly my purpose, is to give the most value to the most people in the most ways. And that includes my family, my wife, but it also includes my clients. It includes pretty much anyone I come in contact with, obviously different levels to where you're at in this little circle that I have. But, for me to do that, if that really is truly my purpose, then I have to be the best version of myself in all the ways that I want to give value in. So if I don't have the greatest relationship with my wife, if I'm not the best husband, how do I give that value of how to do that to someone else? If I'm not lean, fit, and strong, how do I give that to someone else, to my kids, to my clients, to whoever? If I have an ego that's out of control, how do I help someone else with theirs? And in fact, if my kid is on TikTok and I'm like, you need to stop doing that and study. Well, if I know that I need to be lean and healthy and I can't walk by the cupboard without grabbing chips, then how do I give that discipline to my kid if I don't even have it for myself? And I think once you start really removing yourself and having a bigger purpose, a lot of things really fall into place.
Yeah, I always talk about, it starts at home and it starts with your own foundation. And, and in my healing process, one of the things that I had to actually go through was tearing up my foundation and rebuilding it and being an example for my son as well. So yeah, it's an opportunity. Yeah, I just lost my train of thought.
A lot of times we focus on the problem with people, the problem with going through some sort of trauma and getting affected by it and trying to get out of it. It's a dichotomy because, of course, you want to acknowledge what happened to you, but the problem is that you don't want to focus on it. So let me give you another example, right? When you're driving in a car, everything in your rearview mirror is what happened to you, right? That's That's your past, right? Now, what happens if you're driving your car
Mm-hmm.
and you stare at your rearview mirror? You're going to crash. So you glance at it. You definitely glance at your rearview mirror. You want to know the situation, what's going on,
Right.
but you don't stare at it. It's just like 5% of the time you're looking in the mirror. The
Right.
rest you're looking where you're going, and having a bigger purpose. A lot. I feel like right now in this day and age, people focus way too much on their feelings and on themselves. And I'm not saying you shouldn't acknowledge your feelings. I'm not saying like things aren't real that have happened to anybody, to me, to you, to anybody. But
Mm-hmm.
what you focus on, you grow. And so a lot of people get
Right.
stuck in this victim mentality
Right.
and they label themselves. I am a survivor of this. I have that. I have PTSD of this. And, my daughter actually went through a time where there's so much positive feedback by
Well, yes.
labeling yourself these days. If you get online and you say like, I survived this, I have PTSD, I have an eating disorder, I have this, I have that, people applaud you. So it's like you want to keep putting that out there and you want to keep leading with those things. And before you know it, you're creating this identity that is who you are through that positive reinforcement. And that actually happened to her. This is like 4 years ago, but this happened to her to the point where she really became suicidal, and we had to really deal with that. And it was, it was a lot of work, and she's amazing now, and thank God we got to the other side of that. But I got to see firsthand what happens when you focus on, labeling yourself, and you are what happened to you, and that's who you are now, and you'll forever be this person. And instead of just focusing
Right,
forward,
right.
you know what I
There is a
mean?
place to do that. And it's funny you give that example because I use that exact example in my own life, the mirror, and seeing because your windshield is bigger than your rearview mirror. So that's what you really should be focusing on. And that is true.
Mhm.
And it's, I'm careful with the whole trauma thing and not labeling. What's important to know, though, is that we can work through the trauma. We can heal from it, those of us that have been through it. And we don't have to stay there. And what we can get to a point of where I'm at in my life is I've worked through enough healing that I can now grow. I can now do the work like what you're talking about. And it's profound and it's just enhances my life. And so yeah, we do not need to be in victim mindset because we do end up getting stuck there and labeling ourselves. I agree with that for sure. And we do need to look forward. And it's
Yeah.
true. It's what we focus on. It's like if I sit and I focus on just my past, I'm going to start getting sad. I'm going to, it's not going to be a good thing. If I'm focusing on where I'm going and what my because my future right now looks amazing. And when I'm focusing on that, it gives me energy.
Mhm.
And so you're absolutely right about that. So let's talk about this though. Let's share a little bit about your story because you have a bit of a story about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I mean, so my story is like this, and I can relate to a lot of things. When I was a kid, like 5 years old, I realized something was just off with me. Something was different, and it turns out I actually had really bad Tourette syndrome as a kid, like super bad.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was even before. It's okay. Yeah, I'm glad I had it. Actually, no, I'm really glad I had it
Yeah.
because the more things I overcame, like, see, finding the solutions to adversities gives you now
Mm-hmm.
that value to give to others. It just makes you a really valuable person. The more things you could overcome, the more value you could give, the more valuable you are. So thank God I had that, and it also allows me to relate to a
Right.
lot of things that a lot of people can't. But I had the whole thing that like I had like zero friends. Like even in high school, I became an all-American athlete, but all up until high school, I was picked last for all sports. Like it was just because I was that weird, and so um, I, I don't know if part of it was I willed it away, and part of it was sometimes for some people when they go through puberty at a certain age, it really dissipates. So I think it was a combination of both of those things for me because I had
Wow.
full blown Tourette's, like it was really bad. And then my dad, I didn't know it; he was a con artist. And so we kept getting kicked out of houses. So my senior year, we were living in a car, but I was like, no, it didn't matter to me. I wasn't that wasn't who I was. That was just what was happening at the time.
That's the right mindset
And
to have
I
for
was like,
sure.
I'm gonna, yeah, 100%. And I was like, I'm going to get a scholarship. I'm going to get a football scholarship, and that's what I'm going to do. And so that's what I did. But I was a little bit behind on the developmental side, especially like the the personal development because I was so isolated. I really like didn't have a friend group. I didn't have those interactions with people because I was kind of like by myself all
Mm-hmm.
the time because no one really wanted to be around me. And so when I got to college, I kind of like I was really lost. I was really lost. Even though I accomplished this goal, becoming All American, getting a scholarship, to the one ranked school in the nation. I literally accomplished the highest goal I could, but I wasn't really mentally there yet. And then my dad, he told me, he called me and said that he got wrongfully accused, which at the time I didn't know he was a bad guy. So I believed him of check fraud, and he was going to have to go to prison unless I got him $20,000. And this is me being a freshman in college with no people skills. I just actually blew out my knee. So I just had ACL reconstruction. It's midterms. And I'm like, oh my God, my dad. And he said he was going to kill himself if he didn't get that money in like 17 days. So there was this countdown to the person who at the time was my hero because I didn't really know really who he was. And it was all on me. And so as it got down to like 2 days, 3 days, and I was doing my midterms, I took a bunch of caffeine pills. And I never really had caffeine before that in my life. I just didn't at that time in my life. And I had this like major anxiety attack from the caffeine. And it was like something broke in my brain that day because so I was sitting in a football meeting and all of a sudden I could feel my heart pounding through my shirt. And I look down, I just see it boom, 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 moving. And I started blacking out.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was everything just started getting black. So I went out to the training room. I'm like, I think I'm having a heart attack. I don't know what's wrong with me. They took me to the hospital. They thought I was on drugs and stuff. And then it turns out they deduced that I had an anxiety attack. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I'll just go to sleep, wake up the next day and be fine. Something broke in my brain and I wasn't fine. I had 30 panic attacks the next day. Like I could never take a deep breath. My chest was always tight. I would have like 30 anxiety attacks a day, like full blown heart pounding. And it lasted for 10 years, like 10 years of just pure torture. So after I got through the whole Tourette thing, got a scholarship, now I got the anxiety thing, and so I ended up like my senior year just dropping out of college. Like I really couldn't handle it anymore. And I didn't have the mindset that I do now. So I just didn't know what to do. And I just couldn't breathe. It was every day was torture from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. And so I finally dropped out. I ended up becoming homeless again. And at this time, now I know my dad's a con artist, but I had nowhere to go. I linked back up with my dad. And I remember I was sleeping on the floor. So he was like staying in this ghetto apartment, and it's called Fontana, California. It's like if you end up in Fontana, you did something bad or wrong. Like something went wrong in your life. So I'm sitting there like laying on the floor. He's snoring. He's got a cigarette in his hand. He's asleep. I'm looking up. The ash is about to fall on my forehead. And I feel something on my chest, and it was a cockroach. And I like sat up. There's like gunshots outside, police sirens. And it was like something in me just was like, this isn't who you are. This isn't where you're supposed to be. You're meant for something way different. And so the next day I ended up like leaving, and my grandma let me stay with her for like on a week to week basis, but I had to get up early. I had to be working. I had to, keep the house clean or whatever. And at that point, I linked up with a friend of mine who used to be really overweight from football. And at the time now I have anxiety. I'm 300 pounds, and I'm just miserable. And he got super ripped. He had a six pack. So he lost like 60 pounds. And he became a microbiologist chemist, and he just explained on a deep level, not the stuff they talk about on the internet, but how nutrition really works. And within 6 months, I was super lean. I had a six pack, and everyone started noticing. And at the time I was delivering pizzas, and people started asking me if I could help them. People, just strangers, would come up to me because they saw me change so fast. Before you know it, I had 1 client, 2 clients, 3 clients. Within a year, I had a 6-figure business. Within 2 years, I opened up a 7-figure personal training studio. 5 years after that, I co-founded the largest bootcamp franchise in the world. And, but also, again, when I did the franchise thing, I became really popular online really fast. I was speaking on stages. I had, like a really big following, and my ego wasn't like, no one really sat me down and explained how life works and how a bigger purpose works. That's why I'm so into purpose. And I kind of like lost myself again. And I ended up, I was cheating on my wife at the time, which really it was just a bad relationship. I should have just left that. Not my wife that I'm married to now for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
A long time ago. And this is me as another version of myself. This is not the person that's standing in front of you right now. I was just, my ego drove everything I did. And I ended up really hating the person I was and seeing the direction I was at. So I sold my half of the company. I got off all social media for 10 years. In fact, I've only been on since last April. So it's just barely been over a year that finally, after, and then I opened up a bunch of other gyms and I just built my business up again and everything. And I just stayed really focused on having a bigger purpose. And finally, it got to the point where I realized that I'm helping so many people, hundreds and hundreds of people locally. But if my bigger purpose is truly to help the most people in the most ways and give them the most value, I have to then expand myself, and go online again. So a year ago, I opened up an Instagram account and got back online, and it's sort of took off. And I wrote a book called The Three. It's about my 3 rules. That's how I stay super lean. It's all my mindset. And then it's coming out in a few months. And I'm really just out here to really provide the most value. When I could see a change in someone by something that I went through and a solution that I found, and I can now give that solution to someone, to me, it's the biggest high in the world of feeling that way. And I know that's my truth. I know I've been given a lot of chances. Like even my wife now that I've been with her for 10 years, I don't deserve her. Like she's so many levels above me, like in every aspect you could think of, that I honestly, I'm just super grateful to be here. And with that being said, I am a human being. So I'm not thinking and talking this way 24/7. I have my moments. Like, I just want to be clear about that. I have my moments where I'm like, feel sorry for myself and complain about some stupid shit. And then I just have to remember my bigger purpose and who I am and what my mindset is and how I got here and what I'm supposed to do. But I just wanted to make that clear. I hate when people come on these things and they're so full of shit and they act like their life every second is this amazing mindset. And I know these people. I got to see behind the scenes when back in the day.
Yeah.
I just want to be real. So I will never come on and act like, I always do the right thing and I always know the right thought and I always have this perfect mindset. It's most
right.
of the
no,
time.
We're human. We're human. I mean, I share my shit on the podcast too. The things that the crazy stuff I've done, and even to this day, I still, there's things I struggle with, and that's you're right. We need to be that, because I can't connect with someone who tries to come across as completely perfect. I can't connect with them. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you shared your story too, because I love it when men come on here and they share their story and they share how it made them feel, and they share how they overcame it. And each one is different.
But this is what I'm talking about. So also, Lisa, and thank you for saying that. This is what I'm talking about. I had Tourette's, like really bad, but that's not who I am. Like I'm not that. That's
totally
not me.
Yes.
Does that make sense? I was homeless twice, living out of a car, but that's not me. That doesn't define who I am. Even whatever money I have doesn't define who I am.
Right.
The success I have doesn't define who I am. The only thing that defines me is my daily actions. So at the end of the day, I either did everything I was supposed to do, and I'm proud that I did it, and whatever happens, happens. Like I'm not going to say I don't care what happens. Of course I care what happens, but what I care about is that I don't have regret. If at the end of each day I can look back and go, you know what, I did everything I was supposed to do today. I gave my 100%. I helped as many people as I can. I worked as hard as I could. I was the best father I could be, the best husband, the best employer, the best friend, the best coach. Then, okay, whatever happens, happens. Because sometimes, this happened to me recently, actually. I was focused on the results, not the work. So in my business, I own fitness boot camps and I have a coaching business. And I really got to the point where I really wasn't at my facilities that much. They were kind of running on their own and the numbers kept going up. So the results looked really good. And I was starting another business too. So I was really focused on that. And the thing is that because I wasn't there that much, and because I didn't have the influence that I would normally have, I had like a manager that kind of went rogue, and she ended up taking a lot of clients, and it cost me about like 20K a month actually in revenue, 20,000 a month, month after month after month. And so that was me focusing on the result, not the work. Now, when I came back into my main gym, my biggest facility, and I was there full time, just giving all I got. Well, the thing is, the work was good, but the results didn't happen right away. It was actually 100 days straight before I saw a single result for what I did. Literally, like even some months we went down in numbers, not up. And this is me being there, working my magic 100% of the time, and just getting up, month after day, 100 straight days, and going, like, no, man, it's going to work. It's going to work. And so what happened was I started focusing on, check this out. So I started focusing on what I wanted. And it's actually super bad to focus on what you want. And hear me out on this. I'll explain why you should never, ever focus on what you want. So when you're focusing on what you want, and I know this, but I fell into this trap myself, you're really focusing on what you don't have. Okay. So the more you want, the more you're actually saying, I don't have this. I don't have this. And now your most dominant thought, the vibration you're pushing out to the universe, the dominant thoughts in your brain is thoughts of lack. And you're focused on, I don't have. And I didn't even realize it was happening to me. I didn't realize I started falling into this mindset because I was getting so frustrated. 100 days, of just normally if I really apply myself at one of my facilities within 2 weeks, like the numbers shoot up. So one day, and I was just sharing this with my daughter and her boyfriend. We were talking about mindset, and I showed him this year. Here's the numbers in January. Okay, they were negative. It's supposed to be our biggest month of the year. Here's February. We went up like $200, which is like literally nothing. Here's March. It went down again. Okay. Now that's 90 days. On day 90, I realized what I was doing with my mindset. And what I did was I shifted it to, I've already accomplished all these things. It's just time, space has to catch up to what I've already done. Does that make sense? So like, instead of saying, I want to have this, I want the revenue to be there, I just started feeling like it's already happened, and it feels great. That energy I was projecting, not only to people in front of me, but just out there in the universe, because our brains are like antennas. We do project frequencies from our mind. And you've walked in a room before and felt the energy, and it felt weird, or it felt good, or it felt bad. It's a real thing. And I don't know how far, like distance-wise it goes, but it's there, and we've all felt it. As soon as I shifted it that month, like that very first month, the numbers jumped up. Then the next month they jumped up more. The next month they jumped up more. I mean, those are cold hard facts. And I was just explaining, like, the only thing that changed was, one, I was living in my actual reality, and then I switched it to living in the reality that I was creating. Like, I was just living in the reality of the future that I was creating. I just shifted the reality that I felt like I was living in. And immediately everything else caught up and changed. And so that's why, when we focus on the past, we're really not focusing on the future. We're not creating, we're reliving. And I think it is important to like have a specific time, maybe it's an hour a day, maybe it's an hour once a week, whatever you got to do, wherever you're at in your life, where you just fully focus on it. Let's look at it. Let's look at your trauma. Let's look at your past. Let's look at all the shitty things that has happened and is happening. Let's acknowledge them. And at the end of that conversation, let's have an action plan. Don't ever just complain, or else it's complaining, And so let's acknowledge it and then end it with the plan, but then literally put it away and just focus on feeling how you're going to feel when you do accomplish everything you want, and convincing yourself as much as possible that it is actually happening in present time. And it sounds kooky and weird, but there's actually a lot of reasons scientifically why that works, the way your brain works. There's a part of your brain called the reticular activation system, okay? And it filters out everything that isn't important. So like right now, Lisa, if I was like, feel your feet. So now you feel your feet, right? But the sensations of your feet were being filtered out because it wasn't important. So if your mind was aware of all information all sensories at once, you would go crazy. Every sound, every feeling of your entire body, everything that you see in your peripherals, if you're aware of everything at once, you literally would lose your mind. So this part of your brain filters what you could see and what you could hear. And by the way, I know this for a fact. So I went to, this is like 15 years ago, I went to this seminar and they had this screen up, like a big screen. There was like 500 people in the room. And one of the people was one of my good friends. So it's sitting next to me. So 500 people are looking at this screen and they were like, basically, they talked about it for a half hour, how if you could count how many times the people in the red shirts pass the ball and the people in the black shirts like ignore that. So they're all mixing around and you got to count how many times they pass this ball. It's like, if you do that, if you're able to come up with a number, then you could be in the next group because only certain people could do it. So everyone thought it was super important to count these basketball passes. So you watch the video, and I watched it, and I was trying to count them, and then everyone raises their hand, and they're calling on them 7 times, 6 times, 5 times. We're like, nope, nope, nope. So then the second time, I didn't watch and try to count. I just sat back, and I would just like looked at the screen, and you see this person in a gorilla suit walk to the middle of the screen, do like a bunch of poses, and walk off the screen. And I asked my friend, I'm like, did you see the gorilla? I mean, the dude, it wasn't.
No, he walked through slowly. He even walked through slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it.
So you've heard of this, right? So I experienced it in real life. And my friend was like, there's no way that just happened. I'm like, bro, it did. It happened. It was right there. I'm like, watch. Don't count this time. Just watch. So he watches it. So you got a room of 500 people and maybe 490 didn't see the gorilla. Why? Because their reticular activation system filtered it out because it put the importance on the passes. So you've got to be careful what you put the importance on in your life. And if you keep labeling yourself and talking about your trauma and making it who you are, you will just see things that relate to that.
Yep.
And you'll get more of that.
Yeah.
And that's a fact. That's a scientific fact of your brain filtering system. And so between that and the frequencies we put out, that mindset shift makes a huge difference. And so, I mean, again, I'm glad I went through that. I'm 50 right now, right? So at age 50, here I am having this business forever, having to put like $30,000 back into it to make payroll. I can't believe it. I'm like, how is this happening? Like, I've had this business. It's literally the most successful fitness boot camp in Orange County. And now I'm putting money into it just to keep rent and payroll. And then I solved it. And so now I have that solution to give to someone who's going through something similar. So I'm glad I went through that. But and that's the power of mindset. And that thing that I went through isn't who I am, but I'm glad I went through that because now freshly it's in my mind and I could give that solution to anyone.
I have something similar. I had a guest, Logan Cohen, on. He's a doctor. Well, he's not. He doesn't call himself a doctor, but he's a therapist who. He mentioned we were talking about being in survival mode because that's what I was in most of my adult life. And I said, okay, let me ask you this: how do you get out of survival mode? Because I don't know. I was thinking in my life, I couldn't figure out how I got out. All of a sudden, I just wasn't in survival mode anymore. But I had to stop and think about how I did it. And what he said was profound. He said, you create the life that you want. And I about fell out of my stool because that's exactly what I did. I began to create it. And it started with the idea of what I wanted it to look like. And that was hard at first, because it just seemed so big. It just seems ridiculous. But that's where it started for me. And that is exactly what I did. And that's exactly where I'm at today. I'm living that life that I began to create however many years ago. I wasn't fully aware that that's what I did, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're driving in a car that you don't like and you want a different one, you really should in your mind pretend you're driving in that new one. Because if you're having the negative thoughts of being in a car that you hate, now your brain, all it knows is what your dominant thoughts are. So it's just literally looking for cars that you hate and looking for things that align in your life with you having a car that you hate. So it actually serves you tremendously to pretend you're in the car that you love, to really believe and visualize that you're in that car because you unlock that part of your brain that now sees the connections to you getting that. And most people, when they visualize, they do it the wrong way because they're feeling the feeling of lack and they're attracting more lack in their lives through their reticular activation system and also the frequencies they're putting out. And it's a really subtle change in the way you visualize, but it makes a huge world of
Mm-hmm.
difference. And most
Yeah, and
people
that's
do
a
it
really
wrong.
good point. I'm really glad you talked about that because it's true. It's just those little tiny nuances. It's like, like this quote. It's just a couple of words that changes the whole nuance of the quote and what it can mean and how profound it can affect you. So I love that. I'm glad you really shared that. So what do you want to leave the audience with?
I mean, honestly, I think we really just said
Yeah.
it, one, you're not your past. I know people say that, but I don't think people really realize what that means. What that means is that, well, first off, and as shitty as this sounds, as horrible as this sounds, everything that happens as it should. I know that sounds crazy, and especially when you're dealing with really shitty things. But the truth is, there's a lot of people that deal with shitty things. And if you are the solution to those shitty
Exactly.
things, then now you could give it to others. And maybe that's what the purpose was. And, life doesn't always give you what you want, but it gives you what you need. And, for me, it's like when I'm going through something, now I'm just aware of it. I'm like aware of that I'm unlocking a
Mm,
new value that I could give to someone. I just have to solve this, and now I could give that solution to
I
someone
love
else.
that.
And so it all makes sense. It all makes sense now. And it's kind of like the way you frame something, makes all the difference in the world. So like when you go to an amusement park and you stand in a long line just to have this super scary feeling when you're going down a roller coaster, right? This horrible, scary feeling that you love and that you're like so excited about, but you framed it in a way where you asked for that
Mm-hmm.
feeling and you got excited about having that feeling. Now, that same feeling that you paid money for and you stood in line for, if you had that in your car and it just happened in traffic, it would be an anxiety attack and you would hate it. But it's the same exact feeling. So one, you framed it in a way where it was
Right.
positive and one negative. And so when something bad happens, you have a choice right then and there. You could say, good, I'm glad this is happening because this is going to give me value that I could give to others that need it. And that makes me valuable. And that
Mm-hmm.
gives me a reason for being here on this earth. Because if I'm of no value, then why am I even here? And if you really could say those words and believe them and think that way, then it's hard for something bad to happen to you because whenever something bad happens to you, something 100 times more
Mm-hmm.
positive comes out of it. And it's a tough one. It's a very tough one, depending on what we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about, but it is a fact. And if there's anything I could leave people with, is that, you know, um, good, good, this is happening because now you have a chance to solve it and help others just like yourself. And imagine if someone while you're going through this, had the solution and gave it to you, how grateful you would be. And
Yeah.
now you can be
Making
that
beauty
solution
from
for
ashes,
others.
right? I know.
Like I wish I had me when I was a kid, honestly.
So true.
I really wish, I really wish I had myself to mentor me because I
I
would have
know.
saved myself from so much, it, but then again, I
Right.
went through all
Right.
this so I could be
I
that
totally
person.
get that.
So
I'm right there
it
with
all,
you. It's like, I wish I had me when I was young. And I mean, that's really the purpose of this podcast is to help shorten people's pain. That's really what it's
mm-hmm.
about. So I can totally relate to what you're saying. But then if we didn't go through what we went through, we wouldn't be where we're at today to help other people in the future. Right. So I get it.
Yep.
This has been great. And so share
Great.
with the audience how people could reach out to you if they wanted to get in contact with you.
Yeah, the best way is just through Instagram, stevehockman.driven. It's always me answering all my messages. Like I don't have some staff working on my Instagram, So when people message me, it's me hitting them right back. But that's the best
Excellent.
way,
Well, thank you
through
so much.
Instagram.
And this has really been enlightening. And I always, I always appreciate when men come on and share their stories and then of course their success, and to know that there are other ways. And I just thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.